Project started basically because I like listening to audiobooks, and I went through a phase of listening to them before I went to bed, and one of them was Resistance, and I could just picture in the darkness, my imagination was running wild as to how I would put on this production, and I could just see it, I really could visualize it, and I thought, it's Doctor Who's 50th anniversary, I want to try and celebrate it, I want to give something back because Doctor Who had been such an important part of my life. I approached the BBC, Audio Go and Big Finish, and Big Finish put me in touch with the writer, Steve Lyons, and I went through, he sent me a script and I went through that to create the script for our adaptation of Resistance, and once we did that, we put out a expression of interest on Facebook.
The first thing that attracted me to Doctor Who Resistance was the fact that it had Doctor Who in the title, in all honesty. Big fan of Doctor Who, and a locally made production for the 50th anniversary as well was quite a big draw card. Seeing that it was taking classic Who as well, looking at trying to recreate a black and white Who episode just seemed like a lot of fun.
At the time, being quite a young actor, in both age and experience, I had never done any film acting before. I had only done stage acting. I also knew that it was a fun group of people, and I thought, why not give this a go? And any experience I get is going to be a fun experience. And then I just happened to get cast in the lead role.
In the 60s, there wasn't a focus on the companion as there is now. One of my favourite modern series Doctor Who episodes is Father's Day, where Rose goes back in time and is confronted with her father's death, and she tries to change it, and that causes havoc with time. So to explore something similar like that, but with the classic series, was a great opportunity, and it also expanded on the character of Polly, who again didn't have the same attention that a new series companion would, and yeah, that was a perfect character piece that I really wanted to adapt.
I was a fan of Doctor Who, but from the more modern episodes of Doctor Who with Christopher Eccleston, David Tennant. I knew that I needed to get to know the kind of style of that more vintage Doctor Who, and so I watched little YouTube clips, anything I could get my hands on. I did also ask my dad, because he was a big fan of all Doctor Who for forever, and I suppose just understanding that I needed to embrace the kind of character that she would be based on the time that she was created and was played, and who she would be in her context rather than in my context of 10 years ago. Well,
I watched a lot of Doctor Who growing up, which I like to think helps just in general. And then when it was for the audition, I went back and watched a lot of Second Doctor Adventures just to get a sense of what this version of the Doctor is, to get a sense of what the likely mannerisms are, those sorts of things. And then once that audition had happened and I found out I got the part, it was more about just trying to do something that honoured that interpretation of the character, as opposed to being an impression of Patrick Troughton, because I was 23. I was very aware of my limitations as an actor at that time. So it was more about trying to honour that version of the character and sort of creating as much of that as I could for this special story.
So I can remember arriving to the Train Museum, and I can remember feeling very fancy with getting my, the hair up and the wig on and the makeup on and the costume on, and then walking out and seeing all of those trains. And really, I mean, it feels a bit like you're cheating, because the environment is so good that you feel like you don't really need to act, because you just get to play in the environment that you are placed in, and that's credit to everyone on the team who found those locations. There is one shot in the show that just always makes me giggle, which was one of our first shots that we did, where Stephen is emptying his pockets of all of these different items, and I am crouched down behind him, but I was required to actually kind of bob down just for the angle of the shot, so that my hat was in a particular spot. And I remember on the day feeling like, a little bit of pressure, because, you're trying to be the, lead characters, but my legs started to just quiver during these takes. And I was like, you can't go down on the first day. You can't be let down by the weakness of your quads. So that sticks with me.
Well, there were a lot more trains than I expected, and that was a bonus. because I also really like trains. So the fact we're at a train museum, and when it was downtime in terms of cameras are being set up for something else, we could just go around and explore the train museum. So great, it was just really fun. But in terms of the actual shooting as well, it was interesting because it was a really important scene, sort of the build up to the climax of the whole production. So it's quite an interesting scene to jump into and work with Harriet and with the whole crew for that first time and get a sense of trying to figure out where the relationships have got to. So it's like, okay, what's my relationship with Corum's character like at this point? And basically try not to mess it up so much that I have to try and build it in a weird way in the future shoots.
I mean, I think every single location we went to was so fun for a different reason. The cellar was really fun, even though it was really dusty and gross, because again, being in those real life environments just helps my acting so much. And even though the rain was a bit of a time, Gidgegannup was so fun as well. And especially when we went back for our reshoot days, because then, we had kind of worked out a system with dressing gowns and hand warmers and all this stuff that made actually being outside and being in the TARDIS feel really fun, and it felt just like a big adventure every time.
I'm going to say the rain shoot, the shoot that got rained out. It was so much fun to be so cold and so wet, but genuinely, it was a lot of fun. It was the first time we got to shoot with the TARDIS, and that's when it felt really real. When it's like, oh, there's the big blue box. I get to open and close the door now. It was great, but it was also, I think, the largest shoot in terms of crew. It was very exciting, and even though conditions were not ideal, it was a lot of fun. And just so many memories from that day, and the food was excellent too. So, that helps.
I think what I took away from this experience was it was my first big production. I just learned so much from it, from dealing with locations, going on recce's, and thinking about how you run a production on those locations. For example, the cellar location was very dusty. Now if we were doing that, we would have people in masks going out on a field at night in the middle of nowhere, no toilets, no electricity, very limited reception. We would manage that differently to how we did it 10 years ago. And that's just a thing of, you have to be in that situation and learn in order to better yourself and be a better producer or a better director. So those things were so valuable, and that's what I took away. Working with people, working with actors, being an actor's director versus being a technical director. And the most important thing is the value of the people around you, the people that are there to support you, and how you give back to them, making sure that everyone gets their moment. And that really matters in times of adversity, like, day 4, the day of death, I call it, where we got a scene and a half done and then rained out, torrential rain, people in the middle of nowhere, electricity generators, had to get them back to sort of home base. We got an actor that had hypothermia, and you just don't know how to deal with those things until you're faced with them. Having a crew that, after going through those experiences, comes back and is determined to get the project done because they believe in it, that's such a great valuable lesson to learn.
The thing that I think I got the most out of it was a real sense of the capacity for people who are really good at their craft, actually creating something that is great, and seeing the level of dedication that has to be done by everyone, regardless of what the role is, looking at how the sound technicians set everything up and the amount of work that had to go into working with other actors. Because it turned out so well, and that's not a common experience in the amateur or student film world, it really sort of just set a standard for me of, right, well, if I'm ever doing any of this work going further, and I hadn't done any professional film work at that time, I was like, right, this is the standard I need to be at, because this isn't even a professional production, quote unquote, even though it was with the effort everyone was doing. It really just helped set the bar for me, I guess, in terms of, right, this is where I need to be at.
I feel like the most memorable experience of the project was just the camaraderie of everyone together. I mean, the beautiful friendships that I made out of this project, and the working friendships that I still have with so many people, and the fact that 10 years on, I watch it back and I'm going, oh, like, look at that person, I wonder what they're up to now, or knowing that some people that were in the film with us have gone on to some amazing things in their career, and that's fantastic for them. Just such a warm memory, because as an actor, you don't always have an experience on set or in rehearsals where all of the actors and all of the crew are so friendly and just gel so well together. And it really felt like every single person in the team was there to have fun, but also to create something really special. And I think we did that.
I decided to revisit Resistance because I was never quite happy with the final version of it. We had a composer that was with us for the whole production process and pulled out before they were going to deliver the music. We had a sound designer that wasn't able to do it and similarly pulled out in the last minute. So I had to sort of take on doing sound, and I didn't know anything about sound. I didn't have access to the original location audio at the time, so we actually ADR'd most of the whole film. So for that mix, again, I wasn't too familiar with how to do sound and how to record ADR properly. So watching it at the screening, I just knew that it didn't sound right and it wasn't how I wanted the thing to be seen. And I had the opportunity not only to take what I'd learned for 10 years, but also plug some holes with, there were a couple of missing scenes that we weren't able to do at the time, just because logistically, we tried to cram 50 minutes worth of story into 4 days of filming, which is insane. And we would never do that now. Like 7 pages a day is pushing it enough. And so at the time, it wasn't necessary to do those bits, but we were able to go back earlier in the year and be able to reshoot those things with the pilot parachuting down, hopefully how they probably would have done it in the 60s, build little sets and things just to fill those little gaps, and hopefully it presents something new to an audience that had seen the original version. And I think the best part is to be able to sit down with Harriet and Stephen. We've been talking about doing a commentary for this for 10 years, and to finally sit down with them and to watch it together has been a magical experience.
Doctor Who Resistance happened at a very particular time in all of our lives, but looking back on it, for me, this was the last sort of big project I did before I really moved into the world of academia. I am now actually a doctor. I have a PhD in science fiction. I don't know if this film had an influence, maybe it did. But it's such a nice time capsule of that time. And also it's the beginning point of so many working relationships with obviously yourself, the director, but also with Harriet. So many people who I am really good friends with. It's just really nice to have that. And it's also nice just to see, as we are in another Doctor Who anniversary year, it's just really nice to see just how excited everyone gets about this one shared story.
I mean, just so much nostalgia, and I mean, a bit hilarious as well, because you look back and you think like, all the memories come flooding back of like, all of the things that were happening off camera, not just what was happening on camera. So when I watched the scene of us in the trailer going through the checkpoint, and I remember being under that Hessian blanket with Stephen and just the two of us giggling and being so silly, and us running through the woods at night, and Stephen saying, this time try throwing some rocks behind you, or try jumping over here, and just all of the fun stuff that happened either side of each take comes flooding back into your memory.